Welcome to The Analytic Christian. I'm Jordan, and this is the channel that helps you explore Christian philosophy and theology. I'm joined by Dr. Brian Cutter, a professor of philosophy at the University of Notre Dame, and this is the Halloween edition of this episode. We're going to be talking about zombies and ghosts, but not just any kind of zombies or ghosts, philosophical zombies and philosophical ghosts. And we want to see if these concepts that are used how they relate to philosophy of religion. I'll put it that way. So, welcome back.
Good to be here.
I guess first, what is a philosophical zombie and what is a philosophical ghost?
All right, so a philosophical zombie, as distinct from a Hollywood zombie, is a being that is physically exactly the same as some actual conscious being like you or I, but which lacks phenomenal consciousness. In other words, a being that's maybe physically exactly like you, down to the finest molecular detail, but that doesn't have subjective experience, doesn't have a first-person perspective on the world. The lights are all off inside. So that's what a philosophical zombie is. A philosophical ghost is sort of the mirror image of that. If a zombie has all our physical properties without our conscious states, a ghost has all our conscious states without any of our physical properties. So a ghost is, you might think of your ghost counterpart as a being that has the same conscious states as you, but doesn't have a body, doesn't have any physical properties whatsoever. Something like a disembodied mind with exactly your conscious experiences.
Okay. I'm curious, would a physicalist say, well, those sorts of things are just impossible because so long as I have these physical states, I'm guaranteed, on physicalism, I'm guaranteed to get these conscious states.
Yeah, so pretty much every form of physicalism is going to say that philosophical zombies are impossible, and most physicalist views are also going to be inconsistent with the possibility of ghosts. So oftentimes zombies, and less frequently ghosts, are used in arguments against physicalism. So I could kind of spell out how those arguments go to bring out the conflict here. So we start with the idea, so begin with zombies. We start with the idea that philosophical zombies are coherently conceivable. We can coherently imagine there being a philosophical zombie. The idea of a zombie doesn't seem to involve any internal incoherence or any internal contradiction. It seems like we can form a distinct, coherent conception of a being that's physically just like you, but the lights are all off inside. I mean, one reason to think that that's something that we can coherently conceive of is the famous problem of other minds. So the problem of other minds basically is the fact that no matter how much physical information we get about another, say, human being or animal or AI, no matter how much information we get about their behavior and their internal neural processes, none of that shows with absolute conclusive certainty that they have a mind, that they have a first-person perspective on the world, that they're conscious at all. And that seems to suggest, if you take seriously that there really is a problem of other minds in this sense, that the reason there's a problem of other minds is because no matter how many facts we get about the physical processing in your brain and your behavior and so on, we can coherently imagine all of that without any subjective experience, without any first-person perspective in the world. So that's kind of stage one of the zombie argument against physicalism. Stage two is you take conceivability as a guide to possibility. So it's been a common view in philosophy that the way in which you know what's metaphysically possible, or at least one good way to know what's metaphysically possible, is you ask what you can coherently conceive of. So I can coherently conceive of a giraffe on top of a library. That idea doesn't have any internal incoherence or contradiction, and that's why I believe that it's metaphysically possible to have a giraffe on top of a library. If you said I wasn't allowed to appeal to conceivability in making my judgments about what's metaphysically possible, I kind of don't even know how else I would support the idea that it's metaphysically possible for there to be a giraffe on top of a library. So a lot of people think conceivability is at least a guide to possibility. It gives us at least defeasible evidence for thinking that the thing is metaphysically possible. So from the conceivability of zombies, we have at least a feasible grounds for thinking that zombies are metaphysically possible. But if zombies are metaphysically possible, it follows pretty straightforwardly that physicalism is false, because pretty much every definition of physicalism is going to agree that if physicalism is true, then all of my properties are kind of follow of necessity. They're necessarily entailed by my total set of physical properties. But if zombies are possible, that means it's possible for there to be a being with all of my physical properties, but that lacks consciousness. But I actually have consciousness, so I have some property, namely consciousness, that doesn't follow of necessity from my total set of physical properties. So if zombies are possible, physicalism is false about the actual world.
Yeah.
That's the basic idea of the zombie argument. Okay, now how do ghosts threaten physicalism? Here, the starting point is pretty similar. So we start with the conceivability of ghosts. So first question is, are ghosts conceivable? Is it even conceivable that there should be a being that has my exact states of consciousness, my whole kind of mental life, but without a body, without any physical brain, without any physical properties at all? Well, I think that is pretty clearly conceivable, and one way to kind of get onto the conceivability of that is to think of the sort of being you're conceiving of when you walk yourself through like Cartesian extreme skeptical scenarios. So Descartes asked us to imagine maybe you don't have a body. Maybe there is no matter in reality at all. You're just a disembodied mind that's being fed kind of misleading impressions by a deceptive demon. And I think most people, when they think through that thought experiment, they think, yeah, I mean, that's a totally conceivable situation. Maybe I don't have any reason to take that hypothesis seriously, but it's certainly a coherent way that things could be. I can clearly conceive of what it would be for me to just be a disembodied mind with this very state of consciousness, even though I don't really have a body, I don't really exist in a physical world. So the kind of subject we're conceiving of when we consider the hypothesis that we might be in one of these radical Cartesian skeptical scenarios, we're thereby just conceiving of a philosophical ghost, something with all of my conscious states, but that has no physical properties whatsoever. Okay, that's just the conceivability of ghosts. But then again, taking conceivability as a guide to possibility, we can reason, okay, that gives us some, at least a feasible reason to think that ghosts are metaphysically possible. And now from here you can argue that if ghosts are metaphysically possible, then at least many standard forms of physicalism are false. So it's standard for physicalists, so one standard form of physicalism is to say that states of consciousness, like my feeling of phenomenal pain, is identical to some neural property of my brain, like some neural activation pattern or something like that. But wait a minute, if ghosts are possible, then it's possible to have the experience of pain without having any brain at all, without having any neural firing patterns at all. And so you can argue that, well, if it's possible to have pain without having a certain neural firing pattern, that just shows that being in pain is not one and the same thing as having that very neural firing pattern. And the same goes for other forms of physicalism. So other forms of physicalism might say that what it is to be in pain is to be in some internal state that has the right causal relations to outward behavior and physical stimuli. So maybe to be in some state that's normally caused by bodily damage and which causes avoidance behavior would be a simplistic form of this. But wait a minute, if ghosts are metaphysically possible, then that just cannot be what pain is. Because if ghosts are possible, it's possible to be in a state of phenomenal pain without having any body at all, and thereby without having any states that are causally related to bodily states and physical stimulation and so on. So if you accept the possibility of ghosts, there's a straightforward argument against at least many standard versions of physicalism.
All right. Do you want to add anything else before we wrap up?
I think that covers the basics.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
All right.
Thank you all for watching, and keep exploring Christianity.